welcome. I'm Bonnie Graves, and we are continuing our exploration of wine country surrounding beautiful Pismo Beach, California. And I'm really excited to be chatting today with Larry Brooks, who is very much a legend in the wine business, and we are going to taste some fantastic wines at Tolosa here in the greater San Luis Obispo area, right in the Edna Valley. And Larry, you said something when we were chatting just a minute ago that you think you've made more Pinot Noir in terms of vintages and volume than just about anybody in California.
A fine Pinot Noir, expensive Pinot Noir. Yes. Yeah, maybe Gallos made more absolute
So basically
volume.
You're a glutton for punishment is what you're trying to tell me.
I find Pinot pretty easy, actually, if the vintage agrees.
Yeah.
But Chardonnay remains a challenge, even
Yeah.
after 35 vintages or so.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what brought you to Tolosa. I know you mentioned that you were kind of a consulting winemaker early on. I believe it first vintage maybe was 99, and then you came on full-time 2006?
That's correct. I actually came down to Tolosa working with clients of Tolosa. We primarily make wine for other people here. That's our main business, we're a custom crush facility.
And a big one.
Yes, we're a major player in that part of the business.
Let me interrupt just a minute, Larry, because not everybody understands that. I think a lot of people who are wine enthusiasts assume that every single bottle of wine that they're tasting must have its own winery attached to it, when really that's quite the opposite. It's big money business to invest in all the winemaking equipment and the time, and so a lot of people go to, use your phrase, the custom crush facility, where you kind of bring your grapes to a place where somebody with great expertise like yourself works with you to make that wine. So I think that's an important part of the business to understand.
That's true, and even big wineries that might own several wineries, they might want to take a quick expansion and not want to build another winery. So we also make a huge amount of wine for the growers themselves, what in France would be called cooperative growing. A grower has fruit that he can't sell. He brings it to us. We turn it into wine. The wine is storable and retains the value of it. And then when the wine eventually sells, the grower gets paid for his fruit. We pay ourselves for our services.
Which is exactly that sort of French model,
Exactly.
Particularly. And I think for, again, a little kind of insider's tip for people interested in wine, that kind of, for lack of a better term, bulk wine. A lot of the wines that we see that are very, people ask me a lot, they're like, well, how do I know if it's a good $9 wine at Trader Joe's or something like that? And very often those wine values come from an experienced winemaker guiding the production of what could otherwise be just sort of bottom of the barrel, so to speak, which is an interesting
that's
project.
True. That negociant type winemaking, which is a blend and bottle model, the wines already exist and you just pick and choose. And that's quite difficult. I've done that in parts of my career, and it's a learned skill, that blending.
I think so.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here at Tolosa. You mentioned that the split between white and red varietals is about what for the Tolosa label?
More or less 50-50. Our vineyards, we have close to 1,000 acres of estate vineyard here, so I have a lot to pull from. Tolosa takes the top 100 acres of that 1,000 or so. So it's I get to skim the cream, and of that, roughly 50 acres are Chardonnay. Balance is Pinot Noir, Syrah, and a handful of other varieties for the taste room only. Pinot Gris, Viognier, Sauvignon Blanc. I make some Rosé, all kinds of stuff.
Very cool. But Chardonnay, you would say, and Pinot Noir, really, and this is something we're
80-90% of it.
Right, and we're hearing that a lot. I think one of the things that we're learning as we're tasting our way from Pismo Beach across, which isn't a very far journey, but there's such a great sort of microcosm of opportunities for a variety of grapes here. But really, we're hearing a lot about Chardonnay and about Pinot Noir. We're hearing a lot about the fog coming in, that cooling influence. And you said something about that I thought was really interesting that I wanted to share, that the difference between Chardonnay making itself or needing a guiding hand and Pinot Noir, is it made in the vineyard or is it made in the winery? The idea of how important is vineyard management, how important is the process in the vineyard. So maybe you could tell us a little bit, because you have a great relationship in terms of knowing the land here.
Well, because we have estate vineyards, I can control the grape growing, and with red wine, it's paramount. Nothing is more important than growing a better grape, and the better the grape, the better the wine. And if you have really good red grapes, especially with Pinot Noir, the winemaking is extremely straightforward and simple. You execute a classic French wine farm recipe. Chardonnay, on the other hand, this is a great Chardonnay appellation. It's the strongest varietal in our area, but it takes a lot of sophistication or finesse in the winemaking, and it probably took me 20 years to figure out how to make Chardonnay. I mean, you only get to do it once a year. It's a very slow process. Imagine if you're a cook and you only cooked once a
Yeah.
year. It's a little bit like that. You were mentioning before that you'd worked in Champagne, and I remember when I was trying to figure out method Champenois, I went to Champagne to investigate it. No one would even talk to me. I mean, they wouldn't let me taste any of the cuvées. They wouldn't talk about the
I
technique.
speak French, and they're highly suspicious of me.
It was all a secret. Where in California, people are much more open.
Yeah.
They know that even if I tell you exactly how I do it, give you the 100-page protocol, you're still going to do it slightly different. You're going to have slightly different grapes, and it's going to be different vintage. So,
And I think not just in California, but even narrowing it further, one of the things about this area, and I've traveled very extensively around the world and certainly in other parts of wine producing California, but I think one of the things that really separates the Edna Valley, and by extension you mentioned Santa Maria, some of the sort of sister appellations that cluster around this area is that collegiality, that sort of genuine warmth. Like you see winemakers, frankly, usually drinking beer together, not necessarily drinking wine.
Not me, I'm not a beer drinker.
But I think that there's that spirit of
Yeah.
sort of collaboration that's very unique about this area.
It's a very small area, and there's literally only a couple dozen winemakers in the whole area.
Yeah.
So you bump into them downtown, and so
Yeah.
it's
Well,
extremely friendly.
Another thing I think that's important as a hallmark of this area, and we were talking about this earlier, so something important to mention. Boy, another buzzword that's hot in the industry these days, sustainable.
Yeah.
Sustainable. I mean, whether it's a different type of produce, different type of crop, but wine grapes are a organic and agricultural product. But helping people understand what sustainability means, that's a big part of your program. I believe you guys are solar here too. Am I right? At
Yeah,
Tolosa, or solar
yes,
powered?
yeah, we are. We're arguably one of the greenest wineries in California or in the world as far as that goes. We're 100% solar powered. We recycle and reuse everything. We're fully sustainable. The reason sustainability is spoken about so much here is sustainable wine growing started here in the Central Coast about 15 years ago as a worldwide phenomenon. The very first quantification, the growers got together with the regulatory agencies and with the university. So research, regulatory, and practitioners got together, and they literally a binder about this thick. There's hundreds and hundreds of protocols that you sign off on, and you self-grade yourself on how sustainable you are. And sustainability is interesting because it's the most complete system. Besides addressing water quality, air quality, land quality, general environmental concerns, that is making the environment of the vineyard healthier. It also addresses social issues. You sign on that you will pay a living wage. You sign on that you will interact. You'll be a good neighbor basically at every level. And what really interests me as a former scientist is the only things that are allowed in that program are ones that have been quantified to show that work. You can't just say, well, I want to go bury a cow horn because I think it's going to make my...
Let's clarify, because this is important. A lot of consumers out there are very confused about overlapping terms that in their mind kind of come together. Sustainable, organic wine, which terrifies me, and with good reason most of the time.
Yeah.
Organically grown grapes, which I feel great about. And then into what you're referencing, sort of the whole biodynamique, the idea of biodynamics, and that's kind of a whole other system of philosophy, which isn't, as you say, quite as quantifiable in many ways as the sustainability. And you guys even have the label. It's called the SIP, or what can consumers look for?
They can just look for the word sustainable in that being part of that program means that you're doing your best. The SIP is the highest level, which is you agree to let third-party inspectors come in and you open your books to them, and they have to prove that you've followed everything, that you're at the highest level.
So it's like the verified type.
Yeah, exactly, and it's outside the system. It was designed. It is. The practitioners have the deepest knowledge in any given subject and should be the best at doing the best job.
And not the regulators.
But the consumers are maybe rightfully suspicious. So the SIP was put in as a way of saying, you don't believe us? Well, here's a third-party verification.
I agree, and I think to a lot of consumers, Larry, that's really people are coming to understand the power behind their buying dollar, whether it's buying locally grown produce at the farmer's market versus, big box retailers or, and I really like a lot of what you're touching on too about the people who make the wine is essential as well. So that might be our cue. We got some fans coming on here. I think we're going to...
those fans are solar powered.
There we go.
We're not burning any electricity as they come on.
I think we're going to head upstairs though and actually taste some wine. We've been down in the barrel room at Tolosa with Larry Brooks. Thank you so much for your time.
So welcome.
And we'll get to tasting some of these great wines.